East Coast. I'm George Hudson. Joined with me is Robbie Colbreth, and we have a very special guest today, Dr. Carissa Span. We're going to be talking about real estate investing and how to expand your portfolio and new things you can do to invest for the future. If you're tuning in with us live, go ahead and drop a flex emoji. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Go ahead and comment, like, subscribe, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Robbie, how's it going today?
Man, everything is going great. Great to hear from you, George. It's great to have the Dr. Carissa Span here. Let me tell you guys something. This is one of the most brilliant, most accomplished, most intelligent women you will ever meet in your life. This is real talk. I had the privilege of meeting her almost 20 years ago, and she helped us with a church plant, Hashem International Ministries at that time, and she just started to grow and learn and grow. And I had the privilege of watching this lady just evolve into something absolutely amazing. And in that expansive time, she went ahead and she started to really develop herself in the real estate game, right? And she developed in an aspect of the real estate game. And I don't want to damage that, but I do want to say this. Dr. Span got her DMin, or Doctorate of Ministry. She received that from Springfield Christian Theological Seminary just fairly recently, because I remember the post, and I'm so excited to see that she's done that. And I know how she's had to parent, how she's achieved, managed her businesses, took care of her papa, the whole 9 yards. Amazing lady. Let me get off this soapbox for a second. Hey, Carissa, how you doing, Doc?
I am fantastic. Happy to be here today to share this platform with you. I'm so excited. I'm super excited to share with your audience today. Thank you so much for having me. Hey, George, good to see you. Good to see you as well, man of God.
Shabbat Shalom is what some people would say on the Sabbath. So we're going to say that, and we would come back and say Shalom Alachim. So Alachim, which means peace to life. So anyway, with all that being said, now tell me, Dr. Span, how long have you been in the real estate game? How long has this whole journey been for you?
You know, I was sitting here thinking about it a little earlier this week, and I've been in the industry for almost 3 decades now. So almost 30 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so tell me this. You're into one specific aspect of the real estate game, or it has multiple layers. Tell us a little bit about that. What does that look like? Why did you choose that?
You know, so it's interesting. I got into real estate very early in life, and it was just something that I stumbled upon. I actually started out cleaning an apartment building.
Wow.
And because of my dedication, the owner of the building said, you know what, you seem to have a lot of care for what you do. And she invited me the opportunity to manage the building. It was a little small 6-unit building in Washington, D.C. And from that, it just continued to grow. Very quickly, I got into property management, took some entrepreneurship classes through the Jobs Partnership Community Program in Washington, D.C. And from that, it just opened my eyes to just the world of property management. And so I got into managing property, did well. And over the years, I said, you know what, let me create my own property management company, because I had great mentors in my life, right? Had schooling, a solid support system, and the rest has just been like gravy.
Right on, man. I love that. I love that. Now, from your perspective, what do you think are the top 3 things new real estate investors should gain and master?
Here's one of the things that I have clients also. I failed to mention that I'm also a landlord and tenant coach.
Yes.
So I do training. I have a coaching curriculum for new investors and landlords, just walking them through the process. And the top 3 things. The first is marketing, making sure that there's a strong marketing campaign of the rental property that's available. It doesn't really matter what jurisdiction it's in, but a strong marketing campaign to pretty much just bring awareness, letting everybody know where the property is, because you want to make sure that you're attracting quality tenants. The second biggest thing is the application process. Okay. Making sure in that application process that is completely streamlined, but just being upfront, being very clear, letting prospects and potential tenants know what the requirements are to live in that rental property.
Okay.
And then the third biggest thing is the prospect selection, because that's the point where an investor would determine whether or not, who's going to be a good fit. Think about a marriage, if you will. Like, you don't just jump into a marriage. You want to get to know who you're going to be with. And the same is true for, real estate, landlord and tenant relationships. Just making sure that there's a pool of prospects to cherry pick from. And so those are really the top three things: the marketing, the application process, and the prospect selection.
How's that prospect marriage piece evolve? What does that look like?
All right. So after going through the application process, obviously doing a background check, looking at credit, income, making sure they income qualify, and then having these upfront conversations, say, hey, listen, these are some of the rules, or these are some of the things that we're looking for tenants. And just gauging from that, whether or not that investor feel like that would be a good fit. Because now here's the thing, just depending on where the rental property is, that could be a potential tenant for life, right? And so unfortunately, the laws are not the same in every jurisdiction. So for instance, you have some areas such as Washington, D.C. I know some places in California that are pro-tenant, right? So when the laws are in favor of tenant, it makes it extremely hard for landlords to get those tenants out. But then you have some areas where the laws are in favor of the landlord, and the landlord can take the tenant to court, get a fairly simple process to get them in and out of court and have the eviction. That's not the truth for all jurisdictions. And so that prospect selection piece is just understanding who's a good fit, having those conversations. And I like to walk people through going through the application process. For instance, some investors or owners don't know that if they want to include a like a home visit where the prospect is currently living, they can put that in their application process. If they see that there are some red flags, they're like, you know what, Carissa, I'm not really sure. Let me add this to the application process. As long as it's clear and in writing, that minimize any misunderstandings or someone saying, oh, well, I didn't know that was required of me, right? So if it's in writing, it can be enforced.
Okay. So you mentioned in the prospect selection, income qualify and credit worthiness. Touch those two again, just a little bit, because they are so vitally important. Because I think, I believe that sometimes that investor, that landlord can flex in those areas if there's some character associated with that person. Is that correct? And so tell us about that.
That's true. So to make sure, number one, that they income qualify, they could use the 30% rule, which is to look at 30% of that applicant's income. Or to simplify it, if the rent is $1,000, right?
Yeah.
That income should be at least 3 times the rent amount.
Got it.
So for, let's say, a 2-bedroom apartment that's running $4,000 a month, that income should be at least $3,000. That will let you know that the tenant can afford to pay rent. Because here's the thing, emergencies come up, people celebrate holidays, usually if there's a shortage of funds, sometimes the tenants, they'll go straight to the rent, want to pay the landlord late, right? But that impacts that revenue that's coming in for the property. And so if you have investors that's relying on that income, because it is a business, it's not a charity.
Right on.
We need to make sure that we understand that, this tenant can afford it, or maybe it's a struggle. Maybe we should go to the next person. So if the tenant's income, let's say, is $2,000 a month, and I know sometimes as a real estate investor, as an owner, we want to quickly fill vacant rentals, but it does us a disservice when we're allowing people to come into, knowing that there's a red flag, there's a possibility that maybe they can't afford the rent. So that's really, really important as it pertains to the income. So now when it comes to the background check, the laws are changing. And if you notice, I didn't put an emphasis on the criminal background.
Mhm.
because the laws are changing in some areas, which prohibits us from denying an applicant because of the criminal background check. So in some jurisdictions, what we have to do is we'll process the application, we'll look at the credit, we'll look at the income, we'll look at proof of residency, if they have a good landlord and tenant rental history, right?
Mhm.
We could contingently approve approve the application based off of the credit. So we can't hold that criminal against them, unfortunately, up front.
On the credit worthiness side, that's very important. Joe Schmo comes in. Joe Schmo has 2,500 that he's making a month, but he's got a 750 credit score, 800 credit score. Maximilian comes in and he's got 3,500, but he's got a 580 credit score. How do you guys play with that in this game?
Well, it just depends on when we go through that application process, or when an owner goes through that application process, if they're comfortable, right? I always put an emphasis on who can afford it.
Okay.
Some people will use a sliding scale in terms of the credit score.
Okay.
Some of my clients they'll look at the rental history, they'll look at the credit, right? But some of my clients will say, well, Carissa, I don't really care that they haven't paid their medical bill, or if they have unpaid student loans. So sometimes owners will take a look at the full history to see whether or not they feel this potential tenant, is a good fit. So, it really just depends. And so sometimes if someone has had a bad luck on life, and things just didn't work out, their credit score is low, but they have the income, sometimes they'll write a letter to explain, listen, I've gone through divorce, or I was laid off, or I had a bad run, but here's what I did to overcome that. Right.
Awesome.
And so that's important. That's important.
So a good investor, a good property manager, seeing the character of an individual like that would probably coach them to do something like that, instead of having them just walk out the door feeling bad that maybe they don't qualify because this does exist, or they don't even attempt to qualify because they've had that happen in their lives.
That's so true.
So they should just try.
Right.
Nothing. Okay, got you. And so let me ask you this question. Are the landlord and tenant laws the same?
They are not the same. And that's the thing. So I have investors who have rental property in multiple states and multiple jurisdictions. And so an investor should always find out what the laws are of that particular area, because the laws are not the same. There may be certain forms that a landlord has to complete before they take a tenant to court, right? There may be dues in one area whereas there are don'ts in another area. So it's going to be so important to understand what the laws are before just jumping out there. I had a young lady, I was working with her, and I felt so bad for her because she's a doctor. She was just getting into real estate. She bought a couple of buildings. She wanted to get the tenants out, raise the rent, and get new tenants in.
Right.
And so she pretty much just typed up a 30-day notice, sent it to all of her tenants. She actually filed the court summons, the paperwork. And when she got before the judge dismissed it because she didn't follow the process for that particular area. I felt so bad for her because some of the tenants really deserved to be evicted because they had not paid rent, and emphatically stated they were not going to pay rent because they didn't want to pay for whatever reason. So the laws are different. It's in the best interest of investors to find out what the laws are in advance.
What's the resource that you have them go to understand these laws?
So one of the things that I do in my coaching program is I provide them, and I don't have a link available, and I can follow it with you so you can share that with your viewers.
Sure.
But I do provide them with the information. There's a link that they can go to. They can look up their particular state or jurisdictions, and it would tell them. Or as a matter of fact, they could just do a Google search of landlord and tenant laws in that particular area. So if it's Arizona, if it's Seattle, Washington, or Charleston, South Carolina, just do a Google search of landlord and tenant laws, and it will give like a baseline and give them a simple or foundational knowledge and understanding of the laws in that area.
in the 1800s, end of the 1800s, coming into the 1900s, we saw a crisis in the United States of America, right? It's a housing crisis, and you know, slumlords were born out of that, and property values were starting to skyrocket in every aspect of where you live. Are we experiencing, in your opinion, your professional opinion, do you think we're experiencing something like this now?
Listen, now is it's such an intriguing time with real estate because we're starting to see the prices have already increased, right? But now the rates are increasing.
Right on.
And so I'm really concerned to see, you know, when this thing is going to tank, if it's going to crash, because it's a 50-50 gamble. It's like it's six on one hand, half a dozen on the other. And so it's really hard to say which direction things are going to go right now.
Yeah, it's speculative because some people on one side that I'm talking to that are investors say, hey, it's got to drop in by Q1 because it's an election year. This is going to be on the platform. Got to make some adjustments. Inflation spiraling. Some people say, no, we about 2-3 years deep, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. Hold tight. So yeah, it's a lot of speculation, and I'm not sure who's got the right crystal ball in this whole matter.
Yeah, that's so true.
Now, you mentioned that real estate, right? You determine who can afford property, and it's based on the 3-to-1 rule. Is there any other contingency in that? Because we're seeing that here. I'm in the Phoenix Metroplex, right? And we're watching one bedrooms that have gone from 900 and change, and they're $2,000, right? And rising. And it's almost impossible. And they still have these strict laws, rules about how many people can occupy that property, and they also have to qualify to occupy that property. It's a conundrum of sorts that's going on. So how does one qualify? How can anybody even get in and afford this kind of stuff? Because some of these rental rates are the same as, listen, there's some apartments, and I'll get to the question again. There are some apartments in Arizona that 35, 3,700, 5,000 a month, that's the same as $1 million property with the small enough investment to get in. And it's crazy. And the only reason you're not in that property, that $1 million property, because you had to come up with 5, 10, 20%. So you're relegated back to the apartment. But this is what we're seeing happening. Is there in the future, are there anything in conversation about helping from a subsidy standpoint or wherever else, this affordability piece? Because 3-to-1, that may not work for a lot of Americans.
That's true. And so one of the things that I'm starting to see in a lot of areas is that a lot more people are now starting to have roommates, right?
Yeah.
You touched on the occupancy piece. And so that's another thing for investors to understand what the occupancy laws are. Usually it's 2 per room, 1 in the living room, right? And so that's the way that a lot of people are going. In some areas, people are opting to give up. Renters are opting to give up maybe a car to make sure that they have housing. So here's the thing. So I'm in the DC metropolitan area, and the rents, even in this area, have been through the roof, right, for years, and they're steadily climbing. But the thing about housing is that people need a place to live. Everybody needs a roof over their head. And so investors and landlords, savvy investors, they understand it. So they don't really care, you know, and usually the market will drive the price. And in the market where the rents are climbing, unfortunately, renters are having to pay that price. So we're starting to see, for those of you who are familiar with like subsidy housing programs, if you follow HUD, follow affordability, affordable housing, the government has put a lot of money in the rental community for affordable housing by way of vouchers and project-based vouchers to kind of offset the need for, you know, rental assistance. And so we're seeing a lot of that. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And even with affordability, who determines what's affordable?
100%. So what do those vouchers look like? Just so people that are out there listening, people that are going to listen later on, one, is there a link to access that data? Two, and what do those vouchers look like? How do they operate?
So to get more information on the vouchers in each particular state, I would suggest that you all, or the visitors, your viewers, will go to HUD website, HUD.gov, HUD. That's Housing and Urban Development. Go to their website, look up affordable housing, or you can look it up by state. And in each state, sometimes there's a listing of housing service providers that will provide these funding, subsidy funding in that particular area. So vouchers are, it's a way for the government to help subsidize the rent. The rent is usually 30 to 40% of a family's income. So let's say you have a family, doesn't even really matter what the income is. They could be working, they could be on fixed income such as TANF or Social Security, retirement, right? The government will look at 30% of the family's income. And let's say if I gave an example of an apartment of, let's say, 1,000 or 2,000, right? The family who's on a fixed income, their rent may be 100, or let's say $120. The government will subsidize the rest of that money for the rent each month. And even in those voucher programs, there usually is not a time frame of which a tenant could participate in a housing program. As long as they are in need, and usually they'll have to recertify every year, and that's to determine whether or not they're still eligible to remain in the program. As long as they remain eligible, they could be in that program for years. And I've seen some families on the program getting assistance. They have kids and their kids have kids. There is no time frame that they must exit the program. So I think the federal government is recognizing that there's such a need. So we're going to see more funding as it pertains to vouchers.
That looks like a Clark Kent version of Section 8.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is essentially, it parallels with the Section 8 program. And usually it's the housing authority that will oversee those vouchers as well.
So there must be some rules and regs that go along with that as well. So all of that will be outlined, detailed. They can still find that when they go out to HUD.gov and go into that affordable housing, so they can see how that works. So actually, in actuality, there's a lack of information flow out in the market space, because it had more people known about this piece, and that now gives them access to that money that's just sitting out there underutilized, that can be put to great use for their benefit and their family's benefit.
That's so true. And so if you have anyone, if you know of somebody who is in need of housing assistance, maybe look up the housing authority in that particular area and inquire about project-based vouchers, PBV, project-based vouchers. That's what it's called. Project-based vouchers.
Got it. Now, investors will be excluded out of this, correct?
No, they wouldn't be excluded. So if an investor has rental property, they just want to make sure that they contact that housing authority to say, hey, housing authority, listen, we have 1 bedrooms available. We have 2 or 3 bedrooms available for your clientele, your population, and get on their list if there is a list. But just letting that housing authority know that there is housing stock available, because you have some areas where there are a lot of families with vouchers, but they don't have landlords that are willing to participate. So I think that there's a need for more marketing to invite investors and landlords into the program, or to give them that information.
This is savage understanding. Unlock, unhinge, unpack, right? If anybody's listening right now and say, I don't have a place to live, I can't afford this. Now this thing just got completely crushed, right? Because that avenue for affordability is resting right inside of the government. It has nothing to do with party, it has to do with effort. And so you expend the right kind of effort to get into that space, to find out what's needed for you to do this, find out which apartments are participating in that, and or help the apartment that you'd like to become a part of get that, so that you can get in. Now, how long is that process from what you know, from start to finish? 1, from the property itself, and then 2, from the potential prospect for leasing?
So getting into the program is the most important thing. And that would just depend on if there's a waiting list, and if there are vouchers readily available, right? So, but once a family has that voucher in hand, it's just a matter of them finding a place, them contacting the landlord, having the paperwork completed. There's usually a process for the paperwork to be submitted to that housing authority or to the agency that's overseeing it. It has to go through an inspection process. Um, Usually they'll have an inspector that will go out, make sure the place is decent, safe, and sanitary, and then lease them up. And so with the voucher in hand, usually it shouldn't take more than 60 days to lease up.
So in reality, these vouchers are for upscale, low scale, any scale properties, correct?
That's correct.
And really, technically, anybody can apply for this and win.
Anybody could apply. Single parents, seniors, young, no kids, 100 kids, doesn't really matter. As long as they income qualify, they meet all the qualifications, anybody could apply for this housing opportunity.
This is championship information right here. And that means there's some hope that was just born into somebody's consciousness by just listening to this broadcast today. And so they have an opportunity at winning. They just have to let go of their own mindset and realize, hey, there are ways, there are avenues out there. Are you a resource? Have you made yourself available as a resource by service cost or otherwise for people to chime into what you're doing and chime into that knowledge and you to direct them? Are you available for that or no?
I am not available for that. So I'm currently doing working with landlords primarily at this point.
So tell me this then, is it good to use property management companies if you're in like Airbnb or some other investment game? What are the pros and cons?
One of the things that I would say as pertains to property management, if the company, the investor, the individual is not knowledgeable, if they do not have the time, if they do not have the resources to understand what the laws are in that particular jurisdiction, I would definitely say look into a property management company, because unfortunately, what you don't know can and will hurt you. And so an honest mistake could cost thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
The government don't care that investors don't know the laws, right?
It's your
So
responsibility.
absolutely. And so, yes, it is good to have a property management company, but let's say you have an investor, they grew up in real estate or they've been in real estate most of their life, and they have at least a working understanding of the laws. I would say that it makes sense for them to maybe self-manage. So one of the things some of my clients have done getting into real estate, they have actually created a property management entity to manage their own property,
Sure.
right? And so that income, it stays within that circle. So it just depends, but I would strongly recommend and suggest someone who is not knowledgeable, maybe start out with a property management company, ask a lot of questions, understand what the laws are, understand the importance of managing that landlord and tenant relationship, because being a landlord is so much more than collecting money at the beginning of the month.
I got 4 munchables that I've come up with from what you shared with us so far. 1, marketing campaign, create awareness about what you're doing, where you're doing it, and how much you're doing it for. Application process, because that is where you weed out the goods and the bads and ugly. And then the prospect selection, the investor fit. And then number 4, the HUD.gov. So you can go ahead and search out the laws, not only search out the laws, but also find out about the tenant rental vouchers that could be made available for you or some of your family members. It's not a hopeless endeavor, it's a hopeful endeavor. And so with that being stated, years ago, we had an outreach ministry. I was working on my D-Min as well, and we went to the homeless community, a homeless emergency shelter, women's shelter, men's shelter in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we put together a program with Scope and Score. We utilized their tools, their methodology, and we put a life skills training piece on top of that, layered it. And then we made a partnership with the city, with different businesses in the city. And we made a partnership with the late Hugh McCall in the banking industry and certain other places to say, hey, if we bring to you this person who has this gap in employment because they were formerly homeless, we've put them through this process right here. They know how to handle their money, how to invest their money, save, invest their money, tithe their money, save, invest their money. They know how to dress for success. They know how to attitude for success. We want to present that person to you, qualified as much as they can, but they have this gap. Will you take them on if they are equally as qualified as someone else? And so we had Charlotte government, everybody bought off on it. It's a very good campaign. We started to see some incredible things happen. We gained access to Section 8 in this one particular community where we were able to house multiple families. And when we were helping to house those multiple families in a partnership with other churches at that time and other people who saw what we were doing, we were able to fill their houses up. These are townhomes, 2-floor townhomes, 3-bedroom. We would fill them up with furniture, fill up their cupboards, put refrigerators in there, and we had these pianos. We were just in that aspect of ministry, and God was just blessing us. And we had a piano for every home, whether people played the piano or not. It was a big deal. So we put the piano in there because we had so many of them. Every time we put a piano in a home, another piano would come. It was amazing. The whole thing was, it was Section 8. And so some people have this mindset about Section 8, right? And what it means. Are Section 8 tenants good to have?
Going Section 8 is one of the things that I strongly recommend, because you get to choose who's a good fit, right? You're providing not just housing, but in your case, you provided a service which significantly, positively impacted someone's life. The benefit of that is, while you're doing a good service and you're giving back to the community by housing people who need a place to live, you're getting paid for that. So it's a double reward.
Mm-hmm.
So yes. So, I would strongly recommend Section 8 because, again, there is no time frame to be in that program. So that's government rent money that's coming in month after month, like clockwork. So you're getting paid like an ATM to be a good shepherd and to help out so many families in need. Absolutely.
That's big. Let me ask you this question. I'm not sure if you know or not, and it's okay if you do or you don't. Are Airbnb tenants good to have?
I have not gotten a lot into Airbnb, so I don't know that answer.
Yeah. Okay. That's good stuff. Landlord life. Explain that. That's hot. I saw it. It's your moniker, it's your brand. Talk to me, lady. Hit me with that.
Landlord life is a coaching program. Just kind of branded myself as a landlord and tenant coach, and people ask, well, what is that? I can say that I'm God thankful that, this career, my journey has allowed me to stamp myself and to create my own lane. But I created Landlord Life because I recognize that there is not a lot of resources for investors and landlords in the community. So I've created a 6-week curriculum. I take landlords through a master strategy. So today I shared the top 3, but in my curriculum, there are 6 modules that we go through, and I slow walk them from start to finish, because I understand that if you treat your business like a business, it will pay you like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby. And so I've seen so many landlords, they fall through the crack because of what they didn't know. So Landlord Life, it came about at a point in time where landlords were struggling. We were in the pandemic. You had tenants that were not paying rent, and landlords, they're going crazy because they didn't know what to do. So Landlord Life was the answer. And so God has blessed me. It has taken off. And because of the pandemic, I'm now I'm able to reach a larger mass of investors and landlords, working with them in my 6-week program online. So it has been amazing.
Now, is there a cost associated with that?
There is a cost, which is why I work directly with investors and landlords.
And so if I were Airbnb person, quasi landlord, this would be beneficial to me.
Absolutely.
Got it. So I'm gonna be calling you up. Because I definitely, I believe in leaving a legacy for my children. One of the legacies that we're leaving is in the real estate game. And,
Mhm.
moving into that space is what I'm doing right now. George is as well. And so, this is something that I want to learn more about. So, is it out of sorts to give your website or your a link or whatever else to how we can connect to that 6-week train up?
Absolutely. So that website is Landlord Life with a Y, landlord lyfe.com, landlordlife.com.
Got it. So everybody listen. So we got 5 munchables right here. Stop playing around. Get your pen and paper. Write these things down. First of all, there are actually 6 components to this landlord understanding. However, the munchables that were given us today was marketing campaign, create awareness around what you're doing and what you're trying to do. That's going to help your branding. Application process, so you can know who you're dealing with, and then go right into your prospect selection, that investor fit. And then number 4 was the HUD.gov to learn about landlord laws. Also learn about the rental vouchers that are out there to assist you as an investor / you as a renter. And then number 5, landlord life, LandlordLyfe.com, where you can go through this 6-week train up, right? Where you will learn, especially those that are venturing into that Airbnb space, learn about what you don't know. Don't assume that you're getting all the answers from wherever you're going through, because like she said, that one big mistake, that one well-intending thing that you did not address could be the very thing that nips you in the butt and cost you the money that you just made off of that investment. So those are 5 munchables. Just review the whole thing again. Listen, Dr. Span, got a question for you, right? If you were to sum up in the context of what we're talking about today on this broadcast, the theme for today is let go to win, let go to live, learn, grow, and win. Take what you just gave us, think about your life and your journey, and give us a big, giant munchable to close this segment out.
Listen, wherever you are in life, despise not the day of small beginnings. Doesn't matter your geographical location, doesn't matter what your background is. Just take a leap of faith, have a plan, have a goal, have the wisdom and the knowledge to execute the plan, and you'll soar high.
You're amazing. Love you, sis. This lady right here helped me plant Hashem International Ministries in the DC Metroplex. A great leader, a better leader, a phenomenal leader today. And we just been blessed. I got some major takeaways. Hopefully, you guys got some major takeaways. Put these things to work. Get on that website. Get on that landlordlife.com. Make it happen. Don't guess. Don't speculate. Learn. Get on that HUD.gov. Investigate. Do your prospect selections and your application process and your marketing campaign. Just invoke those things in everything that you do, right? Because you're protecting the brand yourself. You're protecting the brand if it's your ministry, your church. You're protecting that brand, and these things still apply. Just make them apply for whatever you're moving into. This has been invaluable. Hey, Dr. Span, the Dr. Span. I call you the Dr. Carissa Span. Would you be so kind as to privilege us by joining us again in the near future to come back in and just talk about some other aspects of this real estate game?
Absolutely, I would love to. It would be a privilege.
George, talk to us, man. Tell us something, baby.
I think it's a great resource. I didn't say much or anything at all just because these are things that people don't teach about in school. People don't teach about even in college. These are things that pioneers like Dr. Span are helping other people take advantage and utilize the resources that are at play. And I think it's a great thing. Just that people are venturing out, paving the way in that industry. And you mentioned not having or realizing that there aren't resources for landlords and tenants to utilize, like all the government funding, all the vouchers, all the benefits that HUD offers. So it's really cool to see, for people that need those things, to have the resources to utilize those. And if they don't have housing and they're looking for housing, then I'm sure it's very, very beneficial for those that are really in need.
Good stuff, man. This is good stuff. Hey, Dr. Span, always a blessing. We'll be in touch.
Yes, sir.
God bless you.
Absolutely. Thanks
God
so
bless
much
you.
for joining us today.
All right. Hey, well, listen, to the rest of Savage Will, we got another piece. We're gonna dovetail off of the nugget she just delivered to us, and the wisdom that we've been able to gather. In this episode 23, this whole thing was about we can let go. We can let go to win. We can let go to live, learn, grow, and to win. And here's a pro tip for living. If you're awake today and you've heard this and you're hearing this, get off the treadmill of yesterday. Man, the treadmill of your yesterday is grinding you to a pulp. It's messing your mind up. It's messing up your dreams. It's messing up your hope. Listen, whatever you were doing yesterday, a week ago, a year ago, if it's not feeding you, if it's not serving you, if it's not putting gooby dust in your pocket, if it's not helping your mental man, if it's not helping your spiritual person, if it's not helping your financial and your physical body, let some of this stuff go. Start to phase it out your life. You got to be able to release some things. The problem in that area is that familiarity, it not only breeds a contempt for new things and for growth and for transformation, it also supports fear. Because in a familiar space, you've been doing something a certain way for such a long period of time that you believe this is right. We just traveled to the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia last week, celebrating wedding anniversary, the whole 9 yards. So when I got off the plane and we picked up our rental car, on this initial part of the journey, I was heading towards my nephew's house. And then heading towards my nephew's home, I knew this old way of getting to where his area is. However, the roads had completely changed. And what the GPS was trying to do was take me through these other roads. And I said, no, this is not how this thing works. This is a more direct route. However, I had not been there in a decade and a half on that route at all. And so what I thought was a direct route was no longer a direct route. And I started down that line and ended up to a detour. So we reprogrammed and put in the GPS again and started to find the way to his place, which was actually faster, but it was on a different route altogether. And on being on that different route altogether, I said, you know what? This old part of the journey just really drives home this messaging that we're going to talk about this weekend. Let go to win. I had to let go of a familiar way of getting to an outcome, an output. It was no longer working. It was no longer serving me. There was a new route that I could take. I had to get off of my hamster grind in order to get to where I needed to go. And found that in this whole transition, when we got there were some roadblocks to certain things that we were trying to do, temporary roadblocks. But because I realized that I had to let go of something in order to live and learn, to grow and to win, I set my mind immediately to that. I didn't have to wait, delay, figure nothing out. I set my mind to letting go of what didn't work for me before. That lesson alone was enough for me. I didn't need another lesson. And so when certain things started cropping up, instead of getting frustrated and agitated with these things popping up, my determination was, we're going to get there. We're going to get it done. And I left it right there. And so I allowed for adaptation and adjustment in order for me to achieve my goal, to get to where I needed to be, to do what I needed to accomplish, right? And to be able to see the people that I needed to see at that time. This is something that's so paramount, so important right now, coming out of or still being in a pandemic, but out of the grossest side of the pandemic. We've got to let go of what life used to be, how we used to act, how we used to function, You got to let go. Let it go. Get off the hamster treadmill of trying to grind the same kind of way. There's a whole new advent of things going on. Man, more people using their own cars, being independent business owners, using their own cars to DoorDash and do other kinds of things and enjoy the freedom of getting their time back, making the money they want to make, whatever that looks like. I mean, that's just a new business model that's just blowing up. It's about 10 years old, but now it's blowing up. People see more and more possibilities in it. People starting online businesses because they're no longer being served by the 9 to 5 and somebody draining your mind and draining your energy in exchange for money. They prefer to do their own gig and create money and create wealth streams and revenue streams. It's so much out there that we could do, but you got to prove one aspect of yourself wrong. The hamster grind is over. You've got to realize I'm awake, and the treadmill of yesterday, that treadmill is over, man. I need to be operating off of something different. George.
I think a great example, I think of the picture you painted of going the different way, on the road was really good. One like analogy or metaphor that comes to mind is, all the automation that you see nowadays takes away the old mentality of the mechanical work, like that gritty, breaking a sweat, getting grease on your hands, that sort of thing. Like that's kind of an old age mentality in terms of sweating for every dollar that you make. In terms of, if you had like a YouTube channel, no one's sweating like trying to make a dollar. Like, the days of working in the mechanic shop or, um, it's just basically what I'm getting at is the way the digital age has transformed how people make money. Like you said, starting a business online, starting a podcast, starting audiobooks. Like people can read. I just saw an ad for this the other day. It's like a voice coach. People can read books and then sell it, I guess, or the audiobook company will make or pay you a certain amount to just read books, which is pretty cool. They're just the doorway has been opened and changed a little bit as far as how you can make money and do things. And, people drop shipping to Facebook Marketplace for no charge because Facebook Marketplace is free to the
Right
user,
now.
right? As far as right now, they may change that in the future, but they're making enough off advertisement. I think it's going to be something that maintains a free service. And then it's just these learning like marketing and the automation of marketing. Like you don't have to use a billboard anymore when you can have targeted viewers on Instagram already creating that logarithm that funnels, what they're interested in to them. So it'd be, for example, if I was selling golf clubs and instead of putting a ad for golf clubs on a billboard on I-95 or whatever interstate road is close to you, I-20, whatever. And instead of putting a billboard of golf clubs on, an advertisement on the billboard where anyone and everyone sees it, what social media allows for you to do is have targeted marketing. So it's only the people that are viewing Tiger Woods' page or Titleist golf balls or, the latest like driver that's released by whoever. So your percentage of buying increases based on the targeted viewers. So if you're showing people golf clubs that don't play golf or are handicapped or in wheelchairs or too young to even hold a golf club or play basketball, you're wasting views basically. So what you can do there is, and this is a very simple example of letting technology do some of the work, letting the user base, based on their user like habits and things like that, take over, and then therefore you're having a targeted search. So, and then you're really not doing a lot of different work. It's just a matter of finding, like we mentioned earlier, if someone was unaware of the vouchers and the government, not scholarships, but opportunities that are available. It's just finding and utilizing the resources. I think that we live in the age of finding resources and utilizing them, or else you can find yourself in that hamster wheel of trying to trying to sweat out the dollar and in the old mentality.
Dude, this is hot, man. This is really good stuff. So it's really, it boils down to however you started something, your investment career, your education, whatever else, with its successes and its failures. You don't have to end up that same way. You have the option to adjust. You have the option to adapt. You have
And
the
I think
option
I
to
think
change.
one thing, Robbie, just to hit on that, is you have to adapt and adjust before you have to, you know?
Yeah,
Like like you don't want to wait till the market crash to then learn a new skill. You want to have that new skill ready to go, have some clients, have some sales, you know, diversify. If you're not diversifying now, it's too late. Like
you're behind.
you can't wait until you get fired to then find a new job. You should be doing a hobby that you love and providing a service for other people, and then it's something you enjoy enough to where it's not work, like it's not an additional job. It's just something that you do that people, you know, will pay for. Like if it's personal training, if you work full time but you're still going to the gym on a consistent basis, bring someone with you, get a little certification, and grab, you know, $50 or how much ever when you go to the gym, you
Whatever
know.
the rate is. Yep.
And it's about maximizing what you're doing with your time. And a lot of people think that, no, I'm not going to charge for that. It's just a hobby. Um, you know, I'm just going to train them for free because I'm a nice guy. I've heard that a lot. And it's
Yeah.
just like, you know,
Bad business.
I don't understand that, because you're providing a service, you've done
Yep.
research, you put the work in, you put the time in, and if they're your friend or someone you know, like they should value that too. Maybe you give them a little discount, but everyone should have some skin in the game,
But
or else.
that's the change of the mentality, though.
Yeah,
You got to value your time, and that's part of
exactly.
getting off that hamster grind. Because when you're on that hamster grind, whoever you're working for is telling you what your value is. They're
Very true.
compensating you according to what they view your value as being. But when you change your mindset about what your value is, first to yourself, well, for me, it's first to my God, then to yourself, my family, then things start to come. That's that algorithm that you're talking about in a whole different perspective. Now things start to align. Yeah. And I start to grab a hold to what is that thing that makes me happy to do for other people, like working with homeless people and helping their lives completely change. May not ever see them again, but to know that their lives have been completely changed. They're not on the street. They're not in the shelter. They're not in the emergency shelter. They're making things happen. That's exciting to me. So that's not work, you know,
Mm,
and we can tag it as ministry, and there can, and I'm compensated to do that in various places. But at the end of the day, that right there is a change in mindset. That's something I'm doing on a regular basis. Savage Will,
yeah.
unhinge, unlock, get untethered, get unpacked. So much good stuff on the inside of you, but you don't know what that is until you begin to explore what these things, these possibilities, these things that make you happy, that you keep going back to, you keep gravitating back to, but you keep trying to attach a 9 to 5 and somebody
Right.
else's validation to. So you got to change your value for yourself, your time, for
Hmm.
your own mind, for your own creative genius. Dr. Span was just on our program. I watched what she did. I watched her evolution, the crisis she went through, and then she re-engineered herself. She gave herself an incredible makeover, and she kept moving in that. And she just kept on repositioning herself, and door after door after door began to open up after she went through the process. And she got to go through the process as we all do. But now she's successful.
And
Now
I think
she's
the great part is she wasn't a success overnight.
no
So it was cleaning that 6-unit apartment building,
building.
you know, taking responsibility and care for it as if it was your own. Like, obviously, that's not the final destination, just be a maintenance cleaner, right? So she could have been upset. She could have just like didn't care about her job. She could have just, you know, had a bad mopey attitude about things. And of course, like life is hard, but like you have to see long term. You have to see, okay, what's next? And that's about the Savage Will mentality, is sometimes life sucks, but you have to remind yourself that, hey, this is temporary. I just have to
Only
get through
temporary.
this. I just have to get one more day, one more
Yeah.
rep. I got to get through one more call. I got to
Yep.
get through a couple more months, and then that promotion's coming or whatever it is. I got to get through the next 10 calls for Airbnb prospects, and then
Yep.
one of them is going to bite.
It's
And
gonna
if my next call was a sale or a win, or how would that change my mentality in approaching it? Right.
So it's like in the scriptures, it says, count the cost. No king is going to go into battle without first having considered the cost. And that's the human resource cost. That's the machinery. That's everything else that's going to be deployed in order to win this battle. Count the cost. What is it going to cost you to change your mindset? Count the cost. What is it going to cost you in terms of study, right? Where you make the sacrifice and you commit to the sacrifice and the discipline and the order, the doc, discipline, order, commitment. That's your doc. And you commit to that sacrifice that's necessary. S for docs. Commit to the sacrifice that's necessary. Do the things you need to do for right now. We said in previous episodes, put your work in. And when you put your work in and enjoy the work that you're doing, because what you're doing is what you love to do, then it doesn't seem like work. Now, after a little while, and you can just put that on a piece of paper, after a little while, you're going to see the change. After a little while, the doors are going to start to ease open. And you'll see the glimmer of light. After a little while, you'll be able to kick that door down and go into this new you that's worth something. This new you that's going to start to get paid. A friend of mine wrote a book, and he was telling me about it. And when he wrote it, and he wrote it coming out of a crisis, right? He started on it before the crisis, and he made that clear, but then it accelerated during his personal crisis, and he completed it. And now he's done extremely well with the book. I said, will you please send me a copy, autograph that bad boy so I can see it? But he started on a process, and crisis happened along the way, but then he finished it, and then it brought value. He knew he could impact people's lives by being a writer. But had he not started the process before the crisis, he probably wouldn't have been as ready for the crisis, and certainly probably wouldn't have been able to complete it going through the crisis. But having managed all of those things, starting before it happened, like George says, before you lose the job, start on your hobby. That's going to become the source of your income, right? Start now. Tomorrow's too late. Tomorrow's called procrastination. If you got that great idea right now, write it down. You got that great idea right now, put the thought to it. Put the pen on that paper, on that pad, and make some things happen. We saw the 5 glory nuggets or munchables that we got, the marketing campaign, the application process, the prospect selection, the HUD.gov, and then landlordlife.com. 5 great munchables that you can grab hold to just to start changing your life, even if you're thinking about becoming Airbnb or becoming a landlord, because you see something. This crisis is an opportunity for a whole lot of other people. You change your mindset. You don't see crisis like everybody else or like is reported. You find the opportunity, and then you go and utilize your skills and your giftings to turn crisis into opportunity, into pay. And there's nothing wrong with that. Otherwise, you'll always sit on the sideline and you'll always complain about what everybody else is complaining about. And then you're going to be caught up in the mindset of it's a Democrat or if it's a Republican. No, you just missed the opportunity. Now you want to blame somebody. So forget about all that. Get on the side of what you want to do, what you're uniquely gifted to accomplish, and start making that thing happen. Get off the treadmill of yesterday. Let go to win. It's time for us to begin to win. It's our time. George.
Yeah, I think the good thing is one thing that came to mind when we talk about like developing habits and developing like side hustles and skills and talents aside from your like profession is there's a book named, or it's called Who Moved My Cheese. It's a simple read. It's almost like a child's book, but it's like 90 pages or something like that. And it's just all about finding different, if I could explain it simply, just gold mines. In the book, it's like rats, they're running through a maze and they're looking for cheese. They find like a really big source of cheese. They just want to sit. There's like 3 versions of the rat. One just wants to stay there. He's scared because he's like, if he leaves, someone's going to take it. and it's like the whole world of the unknown, and he doesn't know if he's going to be able to find his way back and all these other things. And then there's another rat that, you know, he's out, he's more venturous, he's going to go and find other sources of cheese because he knows one day that that's going to run out. And then what, right? He'll have to get up and go anyways, so might as well take the momentum, take the action now, and then later it'll pay off. So we have to find these gold mines, so to speak, in life. And you know, they're not like actual material gold mines, but if like your current 9 to 5 is one gold mine, where's the next one? Yep. Right? And does it have the potential to replace that one? So these are questions you have to ask.
Revenue streams. So one revenue stream is your current 9 to 5. Your next revenue stream is your passion. Your next revenue stream is whatever feeds off of or tentacles to your passion. So and then it becomes money is your investments, where you put your money into EV right now. I put some of my money into EV. Why? Because all the politicians are putting their money into EV, which means that they're going to drive the market so that EV is going to be the solution in the near future. So I'm going to follow the crumb trail in part. But at the end of the day, figure out what those revenue streams need to be. And then here's the other part I think that's important. Dr. Dennis Wheatley, Psychology of Winning. Get those books. Just like he said, Who Moved My Cheese? Dr. Dennis Wheatley has a tape series in a book called, The Psychology of Winning. Go read. Listen, readers are leaders, right? And readers are going to take over the world, right? And are running the world. Read some good stuff. The Psychology of Winning tells you and teaches you how to reprogram your thought life, right? And these negative streams of influence and influencers that you brought into your life to substantiate what you think, feel, or desire, you got to learn how to cut those things off strategically. And in this tape series, this CD series, now on Audible, and this book, I advocate getting all of them so you can listen to the Audible, you can read it, right? And whether you're in your car, listen to the Audible, or at home, and you can read it so you can underline and write down your aha moments that are born out of that. Man, it'll change your mind. It'll change the game. It'll help you realize some influencers have to go. Let them go. Some ways of thinking have to go. Let it go. Some practices that are detrimental to you, drinking, smoking, lusting around, being lazy, procrastinating, let it go. Because we only have so much time and vapor in this avatar, and then it's over. And you don't want to be on your deathbed talking about, I wish I could have done this. I should have done that. Do it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is really key there is, what comes to mind is, we think of social media and our activity on there and the logarithm that we're like projecting based on our activity. It very much so translates to life. And then you talk about cutting out those influences. Like if there are things that I don't want to see on Instagram or don't want to see on Facebook, and I'm not interested in, but I spend my time on it, it's gonna feed it back to me, right? Yeah. So if there are things in real life that I don't per se, it doesn't feed my long-term goal, it doesn't feed the me that I say I want to be, life is going to continue to feed those things to me as long as I so entertain them, right? So if it's being healthy and eating a good diet and so forth, like
clean
eating is really important. So as long as you feed the thoughts and the desires to eat not clean, then you're going to find opportunities to not eat well, right?
Like cookies and tips all the time. If it's 15, 20, 30, 40% of your meal intake, you're going to get fat, and that fat's going to hang out for a while.
Right. And I guess another example with the food is kind of hard to see the translation, but if partying is something that you value or you're putting your time and effort into, but maybe it doesn't feed your long-term goal that you say you want to be, and you don't want to feed that, but you're continuing to spend time and effort, you find the people, the friends. It's all very similar to the Instagram logarithm. Like, you spend your time thinking about it, you spend your time in activity talking to the people that engage in that, or visiting the profiles, however you want to translate it. But it's gonna, like, life is gonna feed you back those things
You back.
if you feed them in the beginning. So if your thought process, your analysis, your time spent doing things, is going to, looks like we lost Robbie there. If your time spent is feeding those things, then here he is. Looks like we got him. Oop. Just to finish the thought, if your time spent feeding those things is still happening, you're going to get more feedback in life from those avenues that you say you don't want, in quotes. Robbie, it looks like you're here, but you're not here. All right. Let's see. Looks like he lost signal on us. But just to recap those thoughts, it was really good to hear from Dr. Span and all the expertise and knowledge that she had. Definitely go check out her website, thelandlordlife.com. If that's something that you feel would be useful, definitely great resources to have. Knowing how HUD works, in my opinion, something I'm still learning about. So, uh, you know, those resources, utilizing those, how HUD works, understanding just how a community works in general, and understanding like how do people afford housing, how do so and so, people get that assistance and so forth. So great resources. It was a pleasure and a blessing to have Dr. Span on today. Um, looks like we lost Robbie. So seems like all we got for today. Um, if you're watching live with us, looks like we have a couple viewers on. Please like and subscribe. Definitely be back here at 11:11 on Saturday, and go out there, spend some alone time, really think about what other hobbies, what other income streams, what other expertise you can tap into to unlock, untap, unhinge, and become and develop that savage will inside of you to where you're eager to grow, you're eager to learn, you're eager to continue on a path of getting closer and closer to being autonomous over your life, the having a grip on your finances, eliminating debt. It just allows for us to be more free, and freedom provides opportunity, freedom provides options, in a world that seemingly is continuing to grow more and more narrow in terms of options and flexibility and finances and those sorts of things. So it's really time to buckle down and value the things that are really important to us. And part of that is allowing us to have that time to give back to our family, friends, community, and so forth. So the more financially secure we are, just the better. The more we can just take a deep breath. Everyone has been there in terms of having the tight bank account, having the tight, not knowing if your check is going to bounce, or not knowing if the swipe is going to go through and be approved. But um, definitely just sit down and analyze, like, hey, what are some interests that I have, and how can I provide a service to people? So we're going to go ahead and head out for today. I appreciate anyone who's listening. Just go ahead and like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Savage Will 1111. We are on Facebook at Robbie Colbreth, and then also on Spotify at Savage Will 1111. So go out there and tap into your Savage Will, and we will be back here at 11:11 next Saturday.